Well, hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300 or 740 KVOR or the streaming platforms for both of those fine radio stations. I am coming your way again live today from Las Vegas. Tonight, Air Force women's basketball taking on UNLV. You can hear that game at 7:30 on Extra Sports 1300. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247 1313. You can call or text in those thoughts of yours. And yes, we'll get more into the AFC Championship. I want to change it up a little bit because the last 2 days we've been talking a lot about the QBs, and for good reason. But I want to talk about the RBs because I think they'll play a very important part in who goes to the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday. But I want to start with what we saw last night from the Denver Nuggets. And I think I am seeing a team right now that is starting to run out of steam without its best player. Regardless of how the next few games go for the Denver Nuggets, and they'll play the Wizards coming up tomorrow night. I think this time without Nikola Jokic has been a smashing success. I think it really has. Even with last night's loss to the LA Lakers, the Nuggets are still sitting at the third seed. When Nikola Jokic was injured in Miami, and it was announced that he'd be out probably at least until the end of this month, I was thinking that this team might slide to the seventh seed and be in the playoff, or the play-in, I should say, just because of how brutal the Western Conference is, and it's still brutal. But the Denver Nuggets have done a remarkable job keeping afloat, and not just keeping afloat, but being successful. And I think Jamal Murray sticks out the most to me, continuing to play at an all-star level. I think David Adelman has done a brilliant job of coaching this basketball team through this stretch. And then there are a lot of guys like Peyton Watson, Spencer Jones, Tim Hardaway Jr., who have really stepped up and helped the Nuggets continue to win games. But Sunday against Charlotte and last night against the LA Lakers, especially last night against the LA Lakers, it just looked like they ran out of gas. They were up by, I think, 16 or 17 at one point, and then the second half, they just completely went cold shooting. I think they made 3 of 17 three-pointers. Jamal Murray overall scored 28 points in the game. He scored 2 of those in the second half, and it just looked like a team that has been working so hard over the last couple of weeks to go it without their best player and the best player that this league has. And that's the thing about Nikola Jokic, is that he just makes it so much easier on everybody. Easy to get shots, easy to, he's the one that's doing most of the rebounding, right? So guys don't have to worry about that. They can run out and try to receive one of those outlet passes that he likes to deal. Like, Nikola Jokic just makes it so much easier on everyone else, makes the game easier. And then when you don't have them, whether the Broncos are winning or lose, or the Broncos, they are the topic of the week, are they not? The Nuggets, you just watch a team that has to work so much harder for everything. Harder for buckets, harder for rebounds, harder for wins. And I think it's starting to wear on them. Charlotte was just like, it was a no-show. They got destroyed. And maybe it's the being able to play the Lakers and seeing LeBron and Luca, national television, whatever it was, the Nuggets were able to muster a far better effort last night. But then, as in that second half, and especially the fourth quarter, they had nothing left. They need Nikola Jokic back, which is the most obvious statement ever, because even if this team looked great and has won every game, they are still better with Nikola Jokic. But right now they look, and don't forget, they don't have Christian Brown. They don't have Jonas Valanciunas. So Nikola Jokic is not the only injury that they've sustained. Aaron Gordon has been in and out of the lineup. There's just been a lot of stress on this team over the last few weeks. And it's starting to wear on them. And if we are, and we'll see, I mean, we got 10 days until the Denver Nuggets turn the calendar to February and hopefully welcome Nikola Jokic back. But they look tired. They look a little bit beaten down. And they keep battling, but it's not enough, especially when you combine it with the fact that they didn't have the best player on the floor last night. And that's also in addition to how easy Nikola Jokic makes it for everyone else on the floor. You also take for granted that in every game, the Denver Nuggets are going to have the most supremely talented player on the court. And especially in a sport like basketball, that most nights that makes all the difference. So you have the Nuggets fading in that second half last night, and then you have Luka Doncic going off for a 38-point triple-double. Not going to win games that way. Not going to win games shooting 35% from the field in the second half, and a guy on the other side of the court going berserker like Luka did last night. So in the grand scheme of things, look, this team has done far more over this stretch than I think anyone could have hoped if you're a fan, or just imagined if you're a watcher of basketball. But they need Nikola Jokic back. And the old saying that absence makes the heart grow fonder. I don't think that's any more true than when you watch the Denver Nuggets the last couple of nights without Nikola Jokic on the floor. But they remain in the third spot in the West, and the Denver Nuggets should try their best to get as much home court advantage as they can. They have the best home court in the league. But there are also two things that are very true here. One is that the Denver Nuggets are a good enough team that home court shouldn't be the be-all, end-all for them, especially early on in the playoffs. If they're the 5 seed, I don't know that it makes a huge difference if they're healthy. They should be better than the team that's in the 4th spot. So, yeah, for maybe a Western Conference final or a second-round matchup with OKC, it would be nice to have that Game 7 not in OKC like it was last year, but back in Denver. But I think given the circumstances, even if the Nuggets don't end up with one of the top couple of spots in the West, you feel like they can navigate early on without having home court advantage. And then the other thing is, too, you just got to avoid the play-in, right? That's the spot where no one wants to be. And you got to play multiple games maybe to earn your way into the playoffs, and then you got the worst draw of it all. As long as the Denver Nuggets didn't end up going down into the play-in over this stretch, I think it's a huge success. And look, there's also time. They also have time on their side, right? Because Nikola Jokic is coming. You think he's coming back in February or for the start of February. You have February, you have March, you have April. And when Nikola Jokic was healthy, and when Jonas Valanciunas was healthy, when the team was healthy, they were arguably the best team in basketball, even considering the defending champions in Oklahoma City. So as long as his rehabilitation doesn't hit a snag and he is back at the end of this month, the Nuggets should have plenty of time to make up, even if they would have lost ground. They really haven't. They're right there with everybody else in the West right now. So good on the Denver Nuggets for the way they've navigated this. Hopefully for them, they can pull out a few more wins and not do a nosedive here. But I can't say that that's impossible given the way they have played the last two games or last game and a half, I suppose. Because again, they were very good in that first two quarters against the Lakers. But as long as they can survive these next couple of weeks, get Nikola Jokic back, everything will be fine. And that was not the feeling necessarily when Nikola Jokic suffered that injury against the Miami Heat a few weeks ago. So the Nuggets fall last night to the LA Lakers. Luka went crazy. Jamal Murray was really good for two quarters last night. And this is a team that definitely needs Nikola Jokic back. Take your thoughts on the Nuggets at 719-247-1313. We will get much more into football as we progress through the course of the program. And before we get to the Broncos, the story today is about the absolute chaos that the Broncos left in their wake when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. It was a scene today in Buffalo, and it brought to mind once again something that Sean Payton has said numerous times about what wins in today's NFL. We'll get to that coming up next. Ryan Kaufman coming your way live from Vegas on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Watching a little bit of Sean Payton. He's talking right now. When DJ Michaels is back in the Extra Sports 1300 studios, so maybe we can run some of that audio back for you as we progress throughout the program. But Sean Payton just started talking as the Broncos begin their work week preparing for the AFC Championship, which you can hear on both here on KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. So however you listen to this show, you can also listen to the AFC Championship. And don't forget, you can stream the game on Sunday as well through those platforms. So if you have the KVOR app, the Extra Sports 1300 app, you can listen there as well. So you make sure that you don't miss any of Sunday's game, both games. Don't want to leave out you Seahawks and Rams fans. Although I do want to get into that conversation coming up in a little bit as it pertains to the Denver Broncos. We did this when the Broncos were getting ready to play the Bills. So I'll just plant the seed right now, and then you can think about it and let me know. Who'd you rather play in the Super Bowl, the Rams or the Seahawks? So be pondering that. In the meantime, Sean Payton has to own up to what he has done, because the wake of destruction, or the destruction that Sean Payton has left in his wake in Buffalo, is remarkable to watch. Today, Terry Pegula, the owner of the Buffalo Bills, alongside Brandon Beane, their GM, who I still don't know why he has a job if Sean McDermott is fired, spoke to the media about firing Sean McDermott. And what you saw, if you watched it, was the embodiment of one of Sean Payton's favorite pearls of wisdom. And I feel like I bring this up on my show all the time, but it just keeps rearing its ugly head. There are so many organizations, and I'll extend it beyond football, just in sports. But Sean Payton was obviously talking about football. There's so many organizations that will just never get it right. Not because they don't have the star player, not because they don't have the right head coach, not because they don't have money to be able to spend, not because they don't have good fans. It's because of their owner. And the best owners are the ones who hire smart people, give them what they need, and get out of their way. And look, every once in a while, an owner has to fire a head coach. This is not about the Buffalo Bills shouldn't have fired Sean McDermott. But if you're going to fire Sean McDermott, okay, a guy that turned around that franchise that was in a really bad spot and was very successful over his tenure, you better get everything after that right. And I'm not just talking about who you hire. Obviously, that would be the most important thing that the Buffalo Bills do. But getting everything else right includes your explanation of why you fired the guy. And Terry Pegula said something about hitting the playoff wall. And I agree with that sentiment. I think you have to look at the Buffalo Bills and wonder if they've topped out under Sean McDermott's direction. But then he goes on to say he fired him because of the results of Denver. That one game, which you can't do that. And I said on Monday, you can't fire Sean McDermott because of what happened on Sunday, because someone just as responsible as Sean McDermott for that loss is Josh Allen. But if you make it about the last few years, which Terry Pegula tried to, started off doing that, then you'll get further. Don't just say it was Denver. But beyond that, the most egregious thing that he did was interject when a question was being posed to Brandon Beane about the talent on the roster, which has come under some scrutiny, obviously, because many people, myself included, look at the Buffalo Bills' recent failures and say it is much about the players the roster construction as it is the head coach. Brandon Beane should have been fired along with Sean McDermott, in my opinion. But Brandon Beane was being asked about the roster. And Terry Pegula interrupts and brings up the Keon situation. Regarding Keon Coleman, who has fallen out of favor, obviously a highly touted player. Everyone was talking about how did this guy out of Michigan State or Florida State, he started at Michigan State, out of Florida State fall to them. What a weapon for Josh Allen. He's just never materialized. In fact, he was a healthy scratch in hockey parlance the week before the Bills played the Denver Broncos. So Terry Pegula jumps in and says that and claims that Keon Coleman was the doing of the coaching staff and that Brandon Beane was just going along with it. Being a team player is what he said. Okay, first of all, don't throw an active player on your roster under the bus like that. You can't do that. Because now Keon Coleman's as good as gone. And whether Bills fans will lament that or not is beside the point. You can't keep Keon Coleman on your roster. And the ripple effect it has, how many Bills players are like, man, he's throwing Keon Coleman under the bus. What is he going to do to me? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is there is visual evidence from the combine of Brandon Beane talking about how Keon Coleman's slower 40 time is going to perhaps get him to drop to the point that the Bills can take him and how excited they were for that. So either Terry Pegula didn't see the video and Brandon Beane told him, hey, Keon Coleman's not on me in order to save his job, or Terry Pegula is just flat out lying. Now, I think it's probably the former, which doesn't speak well to Brandon Beane, that he would lie and say it was his coaching staff that wanted Keon Coleman and not him when the video is circulating around social media. And then Terry Pegula had to come out and say, well, no, it's not that he didn't want him. It was just more of a coach's, some nonsense. It was already a controversial decision to fire Sean McDermott. Okay. But a controversial decision that I agreed with. Sometimes change is needed, a different voice. But when you do that, you know everyone's eyes are on you. Everyone is going to be listening intently to what your justification for firing the guy is. And are going to be listening to every word, hanging on every word you say in the next press conference you give. And today, Terry Pegula left. I don't know how any Bills fan would feel confident, whether you're in favor of the Sean McDermott firing or not, how you can feel confident that that man, Terry Pegula, is going to make the right decision. because you're threading a needle here. If you're Buffalo, if you're Baltimore, you got to thread a needle to be able to get this right, because you're automatically not going to bring in, other than the Tomlin pie in the sky idea, you're not going to bring in a coach with a better resume than Sean McDermott. But what can help is if, I'm not saying you assassinate the character of the guy, but if you can clearly and concisely explain why you did this, while also at the same time acknowledging that the issues with the Buffalo Bills go beyond Sean McDermott. You can keep Brandon Beane employed and be able to point out that this roster needs more talent. You can do both, because you could say, you could blame the cap and talk about all this stuff and say, we need to make our team better, but I believe Brandon Beane is the man to be able to do that. But to throw everything on Sean McDermott and then kind of, contradict yourself by saying that, saying that it was about the playoff wall, and then it was about Denver, and then brings up the Brandon Cooks thing, which is not helpful. I mean, you can have your opinion on it, but when you bring that up, you are essentially saying, or leading many people to believe, that at the time, a very borderline call, which has been shown through the NFL rule book that it was an interception. It was not a catch. It was not up for debate. And you're saying that call, which was correctly adjudicated on the field in that game, that's the call that you're firing Sean McDermott because Brandon Cooks couldn't hang on to the ball, or because the Calvin Johnson rule is in effect? You got to come out there. I'm not saying you read from a script, but you got to come out better, more prepared than Terry Pagula was today. And he has engendered no confidence that the Bills are going to get this right. And they're not going to continue and maybe even further squander an amazing talent in Josh Allen. It was a sight to behold. And again, it's all Sean Payton's fault and the Denver Broncos. The Bills are in disarray. And it's like, before that was a super desirable job. I mean, football town, passionate fan base, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, a team that with a lesser version of themselves has still advanced in the playoffs. That's a desirable job. I don't know if it is as much anymore. And Sean Payton was right when he talked about how there are a lot of teams in the NFL that will never win because of their ownership situation. And I didn't really, despite the fact that Terry Pagula also owns the Buffalo Sabres, I'm acutely aware of that franchise's plight under the same leadership. Even with that, I thought that the Buffalo Bills this year could go to a Super Bowl. Now they look like they are in complete disarray. And now they look more like the Sabres than they ever have. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, speaking of organizations that you may not believe in. An interesting piece out of ESPN today about the LA Lakers and specifically about the way that Jeannie Buss viewed LeBron James. That's coming up next here on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Welcome back. You'll hear from Sean Payton coming up in just a little bit as he makes his first comments since Saturday about Jared Stidham being the quarterback of the Denver Broncos in the AFC Championship against the New England Patriots. But a couple of interesting developments or potential developments out of the AFC West today. As Mike McDaniel, the former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, has taken the offensive coordinator job with the LA Chargers, which has certainly brought some more intellectual capital. You already have Reed and Harbaugh and Peyton, and now you're bringing in Mike McDaniel to the mix to take over the helm. A really interesting move. I thought that Mike McDaniel would be perfect for the Detroit Lions to run that offense. This is the next best thing. And it's partly Jim Harbaugh. It has to be said. There are a lot of great things about Jim Harbaugh. He is not an innovative offensive mind. And the offense with Justin Herbert, who's a supremely talented quarterback, felt a little archaic at times, predictable, vanilla. So bringing in Mike McDaniel, who, when he was the OC with San Francisco, was incredibly creative. And then when he first got to Miami, I mean, they were talking about him like revolutionizing the league almost with the way he had the Miami Dolphins. Well, I don't have to tell you, if you're a Broncos fan, they put up 70 on the Broncos. So this is a big get. This is a big get. But along with that, this has got to be it. This has got to be it with Justin Herbert. And we just saw a quarterback that we were so sure was going to be able to get to a Super Bowl, or at least many people were so sure that Josh Allen would be able to get to a Super Bowl, or just not even this year, just that, like, the premise of, oh, of course, Josh Allen at some point is going to get to a Super Bowl. I don't know if he is now. And Justin Herbert's lower in the pecking order than Josh Allen is. And I guess we're not talking about necessarily Super Bowl with the Chargers, but the idea here is, he has weapons. Obviously, this year you have both of your offensive tackles hurt, which is an incredibly difficult thing to withstand. And yet the Chargers ended up in the postseason all the same. You have Jim Harbaugh, you have weapons. When all and Slater are healthy, they're the best tackle combo in the league, and now and a very good defense. And then you add in Mike McDaniel calling plays for you, crafting your offense. There are no excuses left in LA. When they get their two tackles back with Mike McDaniel next year, and Justin Herbert's healed from all the maladies he's sustained over the course of the season, we're talking about a very interesting AFC West race next year, because you have the Broncos now as the reigning division champions. How are the Chiefs going to bounce back? And then LA adds Mike McDaniel and gets healthier. I can't foresee what possibly could be the excuse with the LA Chargers to not win the AFC West next year. And I'm saying that with understanding that the Denver Broncos are the reigning divisional champions. I'm not saying that the Broncos will be necessarily less formidable than they were this year. But I looked at, coming into the year, the Chargers already in the position to be the biggest threat to Kansas City in the AFC West. And you could still, again, with the Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt injuries, you could say fully healthy. It's not anything other than health, right? Health was kind of the reason why we didn't see the full potential of the LA Chargers. And maybe their offense a little bit, but now they're not going to have all that stuff next year. The Chargers got to be in this thing. The Chargers may need to win the AFC West because I don't know what Kansas City is going to come out of this offseason with. I know the uncertainty surrounding Patrick Mahomes and when he's going to come back. Now you have the injury to Bo Nix, which obviously should be healthy for next year, but where do the Broncos finish up this year? How's their roster look? Bo Nix coming back, all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of uncertainty, and the Chargers should be able to be right there in this division. So I think that is a tremendous get for them. But if it can't work next year, I don't know that it's ever going to. Going to have to look deeper because they got Mike McDaniel, they got Jesse Minter. We'll see if Minter gets a head coaching gig. Jim Harbaugh, the best tackle duo when healthy in the National Football League. Promising young running back in Amarion Hampton. Chargers now really have everything they need. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Chargers because the expectations are going to be high for next year. And then the team that gets left out of the conversation a little bit when it comes to the AFC West, and that's the Raiders. Very intriguing conversation is going on around the Raiders right now, who I understand they have got to feel like, man, we got to do something big to get into this race, to be able to compete with all these teams. Before it was just the Kansas City Chiefs, really. Now it's the Broncos and the Chargers and Kansas City that we got to deal with. We got to do something drastic here. There have been rumblings around the league that potentially the Raiders could be trying to lure or trying to get Lamar Jackson from Baltimore and would leverage the number one pick in the draft to be able to do it. Now, we don't have a lot of hard reporting going on here that the Raiders are doing this. There's just a lot of belief. Again, I think it has to do with partly the division that the Raiders are in, that if they don't do something big, it's going to be a while before they can find their way near the top of that division. It's the uncertainty surrounding Lamar Jackson with the Baltimore Ravens. And it's the fact that the Raiders have the number one pick. And as difficult as it would be to pry Lamar Jackson away from Baltimore with just a pick in the 20s in the first round, if you had the number one pick, would you be able to do it? I don't think either party should. If this thing ever gets to a point where the two teams are talking, they've gone too far. Because from Baltimore's perspective, you already took the side of Lamar Jackson. You fired John Harbaugh. A big reason was to get through to Lamar. That was the conversation, that the two of them were not on good terms and they needed a different voice. You chose Lamar Jackson, and John Harbaugh went to New York. So to turn around and then deal him would be a really weird thing to do. And I know they floated the idea. They put out the test balloon a few weeks ago with that Baltimore, that article in the Baltimore paper where, Lamar Jackson got the organization's a little bit displeased with the way that Lamar goes about his business. And I thought that was a test balloon to see how people will react. Oh, is this the time to move on from Lamar? But time has passed. They fired John Harbaugh. It makes no sense. And it didn't even make sense back then. There aren't a lot of Lamar Jacksons out there. You get a guy like that and you make it work. And then from the Raiders' perspective, I think the only way they're going to get back in the thick of things in this division is they got to do it the right way, the quote unquote right way. They got to take this number 1 pick, and then they got to get Fernando Mendoza. They got to get the coach hire right, and they got to start to build around Fernando Mendoza. I mean, even the Denver Broncos, I know there's the Russell Wilson move that kind of makes it unique, but the way that Sean Payton has built this thing up, he fortified the offensive and defensive lines. He went out and found his quarterback, and they built from there. And the Raiders have got to do the same thing. That's the more tried and true path to being back in relevance. And I don't even know that the Raiders can realistically do anything right this second to get right in the mix with these other teams. Even adding Lamar Jackson, like, who's protecting him? So I think the Raiders tried their, hey, we're going to try to win as much as we can right now. We don't want to tank. We brought in Pete Carroll, all that kind of stuff. It did not work. Now you got to go about the right way. Find the right head coach. Use your number 1 pick to get the quarter. If it's not Mendoza, find the quarterback that you like and build this thing up. And you notice right now with, Kansas City is down. The Chargers, I love the move of Mike McDaniel, but you wonder, even with that, if the Chargers are going to put it together. The Denver Broncos, obviously, are they going to regress? Is Bo Nix maxed out on what he is as a quarterback? Can the Broncos actually get better? Like, as these things are kind of sorting themselves out over the next couple of years, the Raiders can be building this thing up. And look, it's the NFL. We've seen teams go from the bottom of the division to near the top in 1 year's time. I don't think that the Raiders are a candidate for that year 1 with Fernando Mendoza. But the NFL gives you a chance to get good quickly. And if you follow certain steps, and I think the Raiders need to follow those steps. And I certainly think that ultimately the Baltimore Ravens are not open for business with Lamar Jackson. So it's a little bit of a moot point, but I'm just saying, I don't think either organization should think that this is a great idea, because it's not going to just take the number 1 pick, by the way. And the Raiders need as many proverbial bullets in the chamber, as many bites at the apple in the draft to build out their roster. They have Crosby, they have Bowers, they have Genty. Yeah, they drafted him too high, but he's a good player. Build this thing up. Don't try to, go crazy, because this could end up like Russell Wilson again. Not that Lamar Jackson is Russell Wilson, but just the idea of you bet big on a quarterback, you give up a ton, and it doesn't work because you don't have the other pieces necessary to make it work. And you're right back to square one, and you've set yourself behind multiple years. 719-24/7 1313. Your thoughts on Mike Welcome in hour number two on this Wednesday. Ryan Kaufman with you in Vegas tonight. Air Force women's basketball against UNLV. So that would explain the different backdrop that I have for the show. Really, the last couple of days, if you're watching the show on the live stream, whether it be the Extra Sports 1300 social media platforms or 740 KVOR's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you follow either station on any of those platforms, you can watch the show on a daily basis. And while you're there, feel free to drop a comment because this is an interactive experience. And to that end, if you just want to call or text in your thoughts, you can do so as well at 719 247 1313. Broncos starting the work week, or at least the public facing part of the work week. Practice today in advance of the AFC Championship against the New England Patriots. And the first chance to really talk to Sean Payton about Jared Stidham as his quarterback. And that was the bulk of the conversation today. We'll play you a little bit of it. Here was Sean Payton just less than an hour ago meeting the media in Denver, mostly about Jared Stidham. They're talking mostly about Jared Stidham. The one question there at the end about J.K. Dobbins, true to form, not going to um, talk about injuries, but I will talk about J.K. Dobbins coming up. But I wanted to react to that um, audio that you just heard from Sean Payton. Uh, the not changing a lot of the offense for Jared Stidham, or maybe only slightly tweaking it. Like, the point is that Jared Stidham is such a good fit for Sean Payton's system, right? So I don't expect it to be a wildly different game plan, but some of the deep passes and certainly any designed runs that Sean Payton may have wanted to run with Bo Nix, that's not going to happen with Jared Stidham. But the entire premise of Jared Stidham being the backup quarterback and being compensated the way he is that Sean Payton doesn't have to throw everything out the window in order to accommodate Jared Stidham. Now, will he, I don't know what percentage of the playbook, but there will be some margin though in the margins here where Sean Payton may go from this play to that play, or do something like that. And I think he revels in that chance to be able to do that. He's going to accentuate and try to highlight what Jared Stidham does best. But this isn't the Broncos completely revamping what they do. It's going to be a lot of the same stuff that you come to expect from the Denver Broncos on a weekly basis, and that's why the Denver Broncos paid what they did for Jared Stidham. Now, to the J.K. Dobbins aspect of this, one big thing to me in this game are the running backs of these two teams and how they perform. For the Broncos, it's pretty obvious, right? You want to take the pressure off of Jared Stidham early in the game, but throughout the game as well. You need to have balance in your offense. You need to run the football. And I don't think that they ran the ball enough against Buffalo. I really don't. I thought they could have ran the ball more, kept the ball away from Josh Allen more. It's just that when Josh Allen stepped back onto the field, he gave the ball right back to Denver. So it turned out fine, and there are a lot of other good things that the Denver Broncos did. I don't think they ran the ball enough. I don't think they ran it enough against the Buffalo Bills, and I think they're going to have to, and it's this perpetual thing with Sean Payton, because he's not going to, he's got to remind himself to run the ball. He has to write it at the top of his play sheet, but I think he needs to even go further with this on Sunday, because I think it's a huge key to taking pressure off of Jared Stidham on Sunday. And then on the other side for the New England Patriots, you know, we were talking about how vaunted the Buffalo Bills rushing attack is. Like, during the regular season, New England rushed for more yards than Buffalo did. So if we're getting beyond the concerns regarding Jared Stidham, the Broncos' ability to stop the run is once again this week going to be another one, because they do it with multiple running backs and Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson, but they run the ball just as effectively, if not more so, than the Buffalo Bills do. So the running backs in this game are going to be vitally important, and how the two teams defend each other's running backs. And we'll see if that list includes J.K. Dobbins or not as the week progresses. But I think that the Broncos, in some way, they need to take a lot of what we talked about leading into the Buffalo game and just go further. Right? I think the Broncos overall ran the ball effectively against the Buffalo Bills. They need to run it more and just as effectively against the New England Patriots. And conversely, they need to defend the run better, certainly better than they were able to do against Buffalo if they're going to win this game. Because I don't expect Drake May to turn the ball over 5 times. The one other aspect here and of Jared Stidham and his connection to the New England Patriots. I think part of and I've heard this from some, having conversations with some people over the last couple of days, the idea that the New England Patriots that teams aren't as familiar with Jared Stidham as they are Bo Nix, right? Well, I don't know that that applies here because Jared Stidham played for New England. You heard Sean Payton mention Josh. That's Josh McDaniels. So one thing that you might default to if you're talking about having to make a quarterback change so suddenly like the Denver Broncos are, well, other teams don't have time to prepare for him. If there's any coaching staff in the NFL that knows Jared Stidham outside of the Denver Broncos, it's New England. And Mike Vrabel on Monday was very complimentary of who Jared Stidham is as a quarterback. But he's got to feel like he knows how to defend this guy, that he knows his strengths and weaknesses. So I mentioned what I mentioned earlier about Sean Payton and not having to throw out the entire playbook in order to cater it to Jared Stidham. It's kind of the same thing for New England. Yeah, there are some Bo Nix specific things that the Patriots would have had to plan for that they're not going to, and they'll have to replace those with Jared Stidham things. But I don't think it's wildly different. Because they know Sean Payton's system, because Jared Stidham's a perfect fit for the system, and because they know Jared Stidham. So the preparation aspect of this game, I think, could be a little bit overblown. New England knows Stidham as well as anybody not on the Denver Broncos. And Sean Payton brought Jared Stidham in specifically because of what he could do within his offense with him calling plays. So in that way, I don't know that it's radically different, the build up to this game, as opposed to an alternate reality where Bo Nix is getting ready. In fact, Bo Nix might be, there's less knowledge about Bo Nix potentially than there would be Jared Stidham. So obviously it will come down to, execution and who makes the mistakes and all that kind of stuff. But the idea that there is some kind of advantage one way or another in terms of the preparation with Jared Stidham in there, any other team, maybe I could buy it a little bit, not New England. They know who Jared Stidham is, and they know what problems he can present and what he does well and what he doesn't do well. And the chess match between Mike Vrabel and Sean Payton is going to be fascinating to watch. It was going to be anyway when Bo Nix was the quarterback. But this is going to be a battle of wits for sure. But the idea that either team has to reinvent the wheel in order to prepare for Jared Stidham being the quarterback of the Denver Broncos, I don't see it. 719-247-1313. Take your reaction to what Sean Payton had to say regarding Jared Stidham, why he's on this team, and if he has to do anything different with Stidham as the quarterback. We'll continue with this Wednesday edition of Drive Time Sports coming up next on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. As Kel Carr said, welcome back, Drive Time Sports on this Wednesday. Man, it feels like the middle of the week, doesn't it? Feels like there's a hump to get over here as we get closer to Championship Sunday. Uh, both games, I know we're focused on the AFC side of things, but both the AFC and NFC championships are going to be simulcast on Sunday on both Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR, as well as their streaming platforms. So, no reason not to be able to catch it coming up this Sunday. Broncos and Bills are at 1 o'clock, and then the Bears, wishful thinking, I suppose. Seahawks and Rams are playing in the second game. I would like to see the Bears play for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. But that leads me to a thought, and we did this. We've done this exercise throughout the postseason here. If you were the Denver Broncos, who would you rather face in the Super Bowl? Would you rather face Seattle, or would you rather face LA? And my opinion is subject to change on this because it's an evolving situation. But I would still say the more advantageous matchup for the Denver Broncos would be Seattle. And it's as good of a coach as Mike McDonald is. It's having the advantage with Sean Payton over him. It's about the pass rush getting to Sam Darnold. I mean, look, we're at the point we're at the NFL's Final Four. Like, none of these four teams are good matchups, right? And I'm sure Seattle or LA fans would say they'd probably rather play Denver in many ways because of the Stidham news. But the fact of the matter is, these are all really good teams. So to say that you would rather face Seattle is going to sound like a slight on Seattle. It's just Matthew Stafford on that stage. I've seen it. Haven't seen Sam Darnold on it. And Mike McDonald, and that goes for their players as well, or their coach as well, Mike McDonald, as opposed to Sean McVay. So I think that the slightly better matchup for the Denver Broncos would be Seattle. Just looking at the way they match up and who I would trust more on that stage that is the Super Bowl. But I think here's kind of where I've been all along. I think that both teams in the NFC are better than both teams in the AFC. And at the start of the playoffs, I thought there was 4, maybe even 5 NFC teams that I might take over everyone in the AFC. And now we're down to the final 4, and I'm looking at, okay, if it's Pats Seahawks, if it's Pats Rams, if it's Broncos Rams or Broncos Seahawks, it's like I think those teams out of the NFC are better. I think they're better than both the Patriots and the Denver Broncos. And now you throw on the fact that the Broncos are playing a backup quarterback. Although, but Nix, you'd have the same questions because he's never played in the Super Bowl. But I look at those teams in the NFC, and I think I would take either of them over either the Denver Broncos or the New England Patriots. But if there's a better path, if that exists for the Denver Broncos, if they were to beat New England by just a skosh, it would be Seattle. But that's no knock on Seattle because again, I think Seattle is a better team. But it is the Super Bowl, so it's like not that you're just happy to be there, but I mean, come on, you got to the Super Bowl, you take your chances. I mean, we have seen some wild things happen in a Super Bowl, and there have been teams. Last Broncos team in the Super Bowl, if memory serves, that weren't looked at as the better football team going into it, and found a way to win. But I would say that the Broncos would match up with Seattle a little bit better than LA. And LA is going to have the experience thing over everybody. But I'll take your thoughts on that. 719 24/7 1313. Who would you rather have the Broncos play in the Super Bowl? Of course, given the fact that Jared Stidham is now the starter of the Denver Broncos, it's we're in more in the moment right now because we're trying to figure out whether Jared Stidham can lead the Denver Broncos. I did see this on television today, and I looked at the graphic and I listened to the talking head that was saying it, and I say talking head not disparaging because I'm a talking head. It's just the phrase I used. Um, is is there pressure on the Denver Broncos? I know there's pressure on Sean Payton that he put on himself by telling everybody watch out on Saturday after we found out Bo Nix got hurt. But the Broncos as a team, do you think they have more or less pressure on themselves than the New England Patriots? Part of me says with Jared Stidham being the quarterback, then all the pressure is off. Right? Oh, they have a backup quarterback. But I don't know, they kind of beat the team that a lot of people, including myself, thought were going to make the Super Bowl. And the team that in some way, if the Broncos would have lost to them, you would have went, yeah, but it was that team. Yeah, it was the Bills. Like disappointing, but the Bills have been knocking on the door for years. They have Josh Allen. It was their time. It's not Drake May's time. He just got here. And I felt that more pressure would be on the Denver Broncos if they got past Buffalo, regardless of whether they played New England or Houston anyway. But now with Jared Stidham as the starting quarterback now, I don't think it alleviates as much pressure. Especially because everybody's talking about how they won't miss a beat. Like Jordan Palmer today was on, what was he on? Colin Cowherd's show or something, um, said that if Jared Stidham is at his best, there's no difference between he and Drake May. Like we do this throughout the week. I think there's going to be a course correction coming up. because I have seen very little, to be honest, of people going, "Oh, Jared Stidham's playing, Broncos are toast." Have you seen that from anybody? I haven't, and so you get that, but then you get some people that try to go in over the top, right? So general consensus is, well, the Broncos can get by. Maybe they're not quite as good with Bo Nix, but they still have every chance to win the game with Jared Stidham. And then you'll get people who will go, well, I'll take it one step further. I'll say that if Jared Stidham's playing at his best, there's a negligible difference between he and Drake May. It's getting to the point where people are getting a little bit carried away. Like, let's not forget who the number one quarterback is. Let's rein it in a little bit. Jared Stidham's not going to be the best quarterback on that field on Sunday. Now, Bo Nix wasn't the best quarterback to step onto the field in Denver last weekend, but he played better than the guy who's supposedly better than him. So I think if you want to phrase it that way, that there's a chance that with the Denver Broncos defense getting to Drake May and knowing they have to, knowing there's more responsibility on their shoulders to help out the offense, more so than there already is. If you told me that Jared Stidham could all in all have a better day than Drake May on Sunday, I'd buy that. But that would be as much of a byproduct of the way that the Broncos defense played against Drake May as opposed to Jared's, as much as it is Jared Stidham and the way he plays. Jared Stidham's not a better quarterback than Drake May, not more talented. So if he's at his best and Drake May's at his best, I'll take Drake May. But both of these defenses have a great opportunity to not. In fact, I would expect neither quarterback to play at their best because I think both defenses are good enough to affect them. But all that being said, I think there's still more pressure on the Denver Broncos. That Jared Stidham didn't alleviate all of that. New England's the team that just arrived with Drake May. They're going into Denver. If there's more pressure on one team or another, it's got to be Denver. But I would say that there's a little less pressure than there would have been before the Jared Stidham news. And now I think people are building in a little bit of like, all right, if the Broncos don't get this done, there's going to be a little bit of a reason for that. But I still think they have more pressure on them than New England does. And it's just until we get that course correction and people start to go against the Broncos later in this week and course correct and say, okay, we were a little bit too high on Jared Stidham. Now we got to dial it back a little bit. I think the pressure's going greater because there are a lot of people out there that don't think the Broncos are going to miss a beat with Jared Stidham. And as much as I think Jared Stidham and Bo Nix are comparable, I can acknowledge that the Broncos are taking a little bit of a step back with Jared Stidham as their quarterback. Take your thoughts on that. Who has more pressure, Broncos or Patriots? And who would you rather see in the Super Bowl? The Seattle Seahawks or the LA Rams? Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. text here on this Wednesday, 719-24/7, 1313. This coming in from Steve says, hey, Ryan, losing Bo was a gut punch, hoping for a good game out of Stidham, but I think the odds makers have it correct. It's funny you bring that up, Steve, because I saw the line. Obviously, I'm in Vegas, so it would be impossible for me to not see the line for Sunday's game. I think the odds makers panicked, not panicked. Well, I don't know what the word is. They overcompensated. You know, the idea that yeah, I think they went too far. I think that weren't the Broncos like 1.5 point favorites initially? I think they went too far the other way. The Patriots being, what are they, 4.5 point? I should know this. I just saw that last night. I saw the odd on a big video board in a casino. Patriots being 4.5 point favorites is too much. Now, if you just want to say it takes a close game, a pretty even matchup, and just slightly tilts it New England's way, I'm with you on that. But the odds makers, if you mean that literally, the odds makers, no, I think they went way too far the other way. If you want to flip it and give New England getting 1.5 or giving 1.5, okay. But 4.5, I don't know, it's too much. I think the Broncos will be in it. But and look, the next couple of days we'll have our predictions and all that kind of stuff. I think losing Bo Nix can make the difference in a game that is on paper so evenly matched. Something like that could ultimately tip the scales. But Patriots 4.5 road favorites, no. This is coming in from the 719. Hi, Ryan. I think New England has huge pressure on them right now. How can you go into the Denver championship game and come out a loser against a backup quarterback? Your first time without Belichick and Brady and a shot to go to the Super Bowl, and you let a backup quarterback keep you from doing that. They have a huge, huge, huge pressure on them, way more than Denver. But I think because of what I said earlier, that there are just so many people saying that the Broncos aren't going to miss a beat. It's almost like Jarrett Stidham is not being looked at as a backup quarterback at all in some people's minds. I think they're saying that the Denver Broncos will be just fine. So would it be bad on the New England Patriots that they weren't able to go clear across the country on the road to beat a team that's not missing anything? Now, stay tuned, because like I said, I think the pendulum will swing back the other way. I think you're going to have more national pundits coming out and being like, well, yeah, Jarrett Stidham's pretty good as a backup, and Sean Payton is Sean Payton, but come on now, he is a backup quarterback, and starting to put it more the other way. And as far as this being the first trip to the playoffs without Brady and Belichick, that means there's less pressure. Right? That would lead to a team just being happy to be here, which I don't think that the Patriots are. But I think the feeling in New England is we're just getting started. This is just the beginning. Now, look, it's the AFC Championship. So both teams have pressure. Nobody's playing with house money here. But I think more pressure right now is on the Denver Broncos. DJ, who's producing the show today, told me this because he is a Raider guy, intently aware of what Max Crosby says. Max Crosby talked about Jared Stidham in that San Francisco game that actually Sean Payton referred to earlier for the Raiders when he threw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Sean Payton mentioned that earlier as the game that kind of got his attention. And yes, to DJ's point, San Francisco was a very good team that year. But we've seen this, right? We've seen this with Mac Jones. We saw this. Kevin O'Connell was able to do this with not this year, but a couple years ago with backup quarterbacks. Like we see teams with backup QBs be able to put together a really good game plan for 1 week to be able to get the job done. And that's what I'm saying about Sean Payton. I think he can. I think he has the ability to. It's over time that a quarterback shows himself to be maybe not either a franchise guy or a starter or what have you. Yeah, Jared Stidham's talented, but the counter to what Max Crosby said, and look, those are really good numbers. Why didn't somebody sign Jared Stidham to be their starter? All of the teams in this league that are desperate for a quarterback, and it's Sean Payton gobbling them up to be a backup. We have to we're wild swings here back and forth. Jared Stidham is a backup quarterback. He's about as good of a backup quarterback as you could get. And with the coaching of Sean Payton in a 1-game scenario, obviously there will be a second one for the Denver Broncos if they win this one, and we could have a conversation for 2 weeks before that game. But as far as this 1 game, yeah, Jared Stidham's capable of playing well. But trust me, all the teams that are looking for a quarterback, if Jared Stidham was deemed to be, I mean, the Broncos even decided he wasn't the starter. They started a rookie over him. So we could be complimentary of Jared Stidham and point out how the Denver Broncos can still very much win this game without going too overboard and saying that somehow, Jared Stidham, and I know he could start for other teams. I believe that too, but nobody signed him to do that. It's just all calibrating. That's all we're doing. We're calibrating. Got 2 more days to do it. This text coming in as well. Sam Darnold could be a bust, but I think Denver could match up against the Rams defense better than the Seahawks. I think that would be a valid reason to pick. I just think that the Rams defense is good enough and their offense is really, really good. I mean, can you either Devontae Adams or Puka Nacua being covered by Riley Moss in the Super Bowl? Like, just take that and mull it over. Riley Moss covering Devontae Adams or Puka Nacua. I think Seattle's defense is absolutely better. I think you're 100% right on that. But Jared versus the pass rushers that the Rams have, and the Rams are a good defense. And then I throw in the trust level I would have with Matthew Stafford, with Sean McVay, and that puts it over the top. It's a negligible difference, though. I mean, Seattle, and let's give them credit for what they did against San Francisco this weekend. A really good football team. Really good football team. I'll say Seattle's by a skosh. The better matchup for the Denver Broncos. But of course, they have their hands full with the New England Patriots and having Jared Stidham as their quarterback. What else? Yeah, I think. This story from LA. I'll get to it here. ESPN came out with a piece today about some of the issues that have existed within the Los Angeles Lakers franchise for the last few years. And it led Jeannie Buss, obviously, to fire her brothers. And it led to the eventual sale of the team, or a majority stake in the team, to Mark Bartelstein's an agent, but to the guy who's part owner of the Dodgers. And first of all, this is why I don't like teams being handed down to kids. The scions. And it's one of the beliefs I've had. I said this when the Broncos were going through all their stuff. It may be in their best interest to be sold to an outside party. And look at where the Broncos are. There's no question they are better off right now than they would have been if one of Bolin's children's would have gotten this team. I mean, it's like an episode of Succession. You have multiple kids, multiple scions taking over the organization. They're going to be bickering. They all want to be the main person. And there's some question on whether they're capable of running an organization. So that part doesn't surprise me. Neither really does the part that Jeannie Buss has kind of turned on LeBron James. And it's being said in there that she thought his ego got outsized. And she didn't like how everyone felt like LeBron was saving the Los Angeles Lakers. I can understand where that resentment would grow. Here's the problem. You placated his every whim. You hired JJ Redick. You drafted Bronny. Like, you don't think that would lead to LeBron James feeling like he owns in some way the Los Angeles Lakers franchise? And he did choose you. There was no reason from a basketball perspective for LeBron James to choose the LA Lakers, but he did. And he saved that organization. So I understand why she may have turned on him and why LeBron James's ego may have gotten out of control, but how do you think it got there? All right, coming up tonight, Air Force women's basketball at 7:30 against UNLV. Appreciate your interaction and your time. Talk to you tomorrow.